You ever notice how the lawns in Maplewood all look airbrushed, like someone photoshopped grass and then forgot to tell the homeowners they were supposed to live normal lives on top of it? Sprinklers rotate on timers, mailboxes match the HOA-approved palette, and the local Facebook group argues harder about recycling bins than Congress argues about anything meaningful. I used to fit right in, smile, wave, bake cookies for the school fundraiser, pretend everything was fine. Then my husband flew my family to Cancun to celebrate his brand new future. Without me. I wasn't invited, but I was mentioned. She's predictable, he told them, which is the sort of thing you only say when you're very confident someone won't do anything about it. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Gregory Miller, Regional Sales Director, father of 0 because we weren't in the right place yet, and walking midlife crisis in loafers, suddenly discovered fitted shirts and cologne you have to special order. He called it brand alignment, which is a complicated way of saying he wanted to impress someone who wasn't me. I'm Tanya Miller, pediatric nurse certified in crisis response, which turns out to apply remarkably well to suburban betrayal. I'm used to holding other people's chaos together, but apparently that skill transfers to dismantling a marriage with the same calm you'd use to restart an IV. It started small. Greg began parking on the opposite side of the driveway, his quick exits for client dinners. He left his phone face down, screen brightness low, ringtone muted. He laughed at texts that didn't include me, skipped dinner, and once called me reliable, the way you'd describe a dishwasher that hums without complaint. I asked once, just once, if anything was going on. He smiled, kissed me on the cheek and said, "You're imagining things," which is exactly what you say when you hope the other person keeps imagining and never starts investigating. Maplewood thrives on gossip. Secrets don't last here. They compost. Ironically, Greg might have survived longer if he'd cheated in another zip code. But no, my husband had ambition. He brought his new consultant straight into the same social circle that sends Christmas cards with dogs in matching pajamas. Her name was Lila, though I didn't know that yet. She had a gym-sculpted look, the kind of glow you only get from filtered water and filtered photos. Greg introduced her at a neighborhood barbecue as someone helping him modernize his sales strategy. Translation, someone who made him feel 20 again. I might have swallowed my suspicion for a few more weeks if it weren't for Claudia, his sister, who posted a boomerang video on Instagram that will probably live in a museum titled How the Stupid Survive. There they were at the airport, Greg and his consultant, side by side, arms linked like they'd rehearsed it. #family trip, palm tree emoji, champagne emoji, airplane emoji. Claudia's caption, "He deserves this break." He deserved a break. I stared at the video 3 full minutes before I noticed the real insult. My mother and sister were in the shot too. He flew my family out to celebrate. My absence was not an oversight, it was strategy. The kind where the villain doesn't bother hiding the monologue because he's already walked away from the explosion. I didn't text him. I didn't call. I didn't throw a vase or eat an entire cake on the kitchen floor like some inspirational breakup montage. I just stood in our spotless living room, looked around at the furniture I picked, the art I hung, the appliances I paid for, and I felt something shift. Not crack, not shatter, but slide into alignment. Like a puzzle piece I didn't know was rotated, finally locked into place. He thought I was predictable. That was his mistake, not mine. My first move was silence. People underestimate the quiet ones. They expect fireworks, not spreadsheets. While Greg toasted tropical sunsets, I logged into our joint account. Every purchase I made over the last 15 years, documented, every dollar I earned, traceable. A nurse may not make sales director money, but a nurse knows how to fill out forms correctly, and forms are power. I transferred a large portion of the account to my personal checking under the category of anticipated medical costs. Perfectly legal. Nurses tend to know how to phrase things to avoid questions. Next, the car. The SUV was technically in my name. Greg just liked to drive it because it made him look like a successful family man without the inconvenience of humility. A quick visit to the DMV website and a notarized signature later, the title now belonged to my brother Frankie. Frankie is a mechanic and has a special talent for losing vehicles for extended periods of time. When Greg got home, that car would be somewhere in Frankie's garage under a tarp, probably with the tires off for routine inspection. Then came the subscriptions. Streaming, gym, Amazon, even the meal kit he claimed made him more efficient. All gone. Autopay, disabled, rewards points, redeemed for gift cards in my name. If Greg wanted to rewatch his favorite show about morally bankrupt lawyers, he'd have to do it the old-fashioned way, by facing his own reflection. The house was next. We'd bought it together, but I paid for most of the furniture, while Greg paid for things that impress people during tours, like speakers built into the ceiling and a fridge that tells you when you're low on oat milk. I booked a moving company for the following Wednesday. 4 guys, 2 trucks, and clear instructions. Remove everything with a receipt that has my name on it. That included the silverware. He could keep the fridge, I'd keep the forks. All of this happened in 48 hours. 2 full work shifts, 1 night of 0 sleep, 5 cups of gas station coffee, and exactly 1 neighbor asking, "Everything all right, Tanya?" I smiled sweetly and said, "Just reorganizing." Maplewood translation. Something scandalous is coming. Please alert the group chat. The best part? Every move I made had paperwork behind it. No cheating. No sneaking into accounts I wasn't authorized to use. No melodramatic destruction of property. I was the model citizen of pre-divorce preparation. Judges love a woman with documentation and calm eyebrows. The only person I did confide in was Frankie. He picked up on the first ring, which is how you know someone loves you or owes you money. When I told him Greg was in Cancun with a younger woman and a suitcase full of arrogance, Frankie said, "So we're playing chess, not checkers." Then he asked what time he should bring the tow truck. On the 3rd night, I sat on the edge of the bed Greg and I used to share and scrolled through Claudia's posts again. They were all fake sunlight and fake gratitude. My mother hugged Greg in one shot, clearly unaware she was supporting the man who sent me a text just hours earlier that read, "Don't be there when we return. Your old news." Old news, like I'd been printed, smudged, and tossed in the recycling bin with the other expired coupons. That was the exact moment I stopped being sad and started being strategic. The next morning, I went to work. Because unlike Greg, I still had a job that involved helping actual humans. I treated 2 toddlers with ear infections, soothed 1 anxious parent, and administered a vaccine to a kid who tried to bite me. Through it all, my coworkers said I seemed focused. They had no idea that I was mentally labeling furniture by resale value. When I got home, I packed. Not my clothes. Those could fit in 2 suitcases. I packed the things he took for granted. The blender that only I used. The art print I bought at a local fair. The blanket my aunt crocheted. And the wedding album, which I didn't pack for sentimental reasons. I packed it to prove a point. I remember what promises look like. That doesn't mean I'm obligated to live under them forever. The movers arrived exactly on time. They were polite, efficient, and didn't ask questions after I tipped them in cash. By the time they left, the house looked like a staged listing. Surface level fine, hollow underneath. Even the silverware drawer was empty, which felt symbolic in a poetic way I planned to pretend was intentional. That night, I stood in the doorway of his, half-furnished suburban palace, and I didn't feel triumphant. I felt ready. Revenge isn't a sprint. It's prep work followed by immaculate timing. I didn't leave a note. Notes are for people who want closure. I wanted consequences. Greg and his influencer companion would return in 2 days. I would not be waiting inside with tissues and trembling voice. I'd be outside, in my car, engine warm, windows cracked, watching the moment his perfect narrative collided with reality. He thought predictable meant harmless. Predictable just means you haven't seen the variables yet. I locked the door, pocketed the new keys from the locksmith, and walked to my car with the kind of steady pace that makes security cameras nervous. I wasn't angry. Anger burns out. I was something slower, sharper, and far more durable. Sometimes the quiet one isn't the victim. Sometimes she's the audit. And the numbers were about to get very uncomfortable. There's a certain kind of quiet that settles over a house after you've removed everything that made it feel like yours. Not peaceful quiet, more like the echo you get in a hotel room at checkout, when your suitcase is zipped, your toothbrush is missing from the sink, and the place feels offended that you ever pretended it was home. That was my living room on Wednesday morning. A couch-shaped ghost mark in the carpet, pale rectangles where framed photos used to hang, and the faint outline of a dining table, like a chalk body on the floor. I stood there and admired my work, the way an artist examines a charcoal sketch. Not perfect, but absolutely intentional. If Greg wanted space, I was giving him negative space, a whole house of it. I spent the next few hours closing loops, because a good exit strategy is just organization with a little spite sprinkled in. I changed the Wi-Fi password to something poetic, Ask Leela, then turned off guest access. I cancelled the landscaper, the house cleaner, the pest control contract, the seasonal window washer, and Greg's quarterly wine subscription. The only recurring bill left was the mortgage, and that one he could enjoy alone. Just him and the echo. Then came the mail. People forget about mail when they fantasize about dramatic exits, but unsubscribing from real life requires stamps. I redirected all essential bills to my new rented apartment, rent-controlled, second floor, no HOA board members lurking with clipboards. I also filed a change of address card for Greg, forwarding his mail to a P.O. box I opened in his name. Nothing illegal, just inconvenient. He'd still get everything, just not exactly when he wanted it. By noon, I sat at the kitchen counter, eating cold leftover noodles straight from the container. The counter itself would be gone by sunset. Technically, the quartz slab belonged to me. I paid for it when Greg said laminate was fine. The movers were coming back for it, and I was already looking forward to imagining Greg's face when he walked into a kitchen missing not just cutlery, but countertops. The moment I finished eating, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Marla, the woman across the street, whose hobbies include baking and surveillance. Marla: "Hey sweetheart, saw the truck again today. Everything all right?" There it was, the Maplewood code phrase for "spill it, I need content." I replied, "Just reorganizing my life," then added a smiley face. Nothing spooks a gossip queen like cheerful ambiguity. Right on schedule, 30 minutes later, I got a message from someone completely different, my coworker, Lisa. Lisa: "Girl, why is Greg tagged in a photo from Cancun with someone half his age wearing matching bracelets?" Ah, so the wildfire had officially jumped neighborhoods. I didn't answer, not because I didn't want to, but because silence is more dramatic than words. And right now I was cultivating mystery like a currency. Let the story grow without me. It always gets better that way. Around 2 p.m., I got another message, this time from Greg's work email, which automatically forwarded to both of us because we share the home office setup. The subject line read, "Urgent, Platinum Client Dinner Cancelled," which was hilarious, considering Greg was probably standing on a beach pretending to care about client retention while drinking something served in a coconut. I filed the email under Future Karma. Then I drove across town to see Frankie, who was elbow deep in an engine when I arrived. He wiped his hands on a rag the texture of regret and nodded toward the back. "Your chariot is hidden," he said. "If he wants it, he'll need a wrench, a miracle, and a new attitude." "Perfect," I said. "That's 3 things he doesn't own." We went over the rest of the plan. Frankie enjoyed the scheming part more than I expected, which is either touching or concerning. He offered to accidentally misplace Greg's toolbox next, but I said no. The goal was discomfort, not sabotage. If I crossed that line, I'd start sounding like Greg, the kind of person who thinks winning matters more than keeping your soul intact. On the drive back, I rehearsed my future conversation with Greg, which I expected to be short and satisfying. "Greg, what did you do?" Me. "Inventory control." "Greg, you're overreacting." Me. "That's the first time you've ever accused me of that." I'd play it calm, crisp, graceful vengeance with no raised voice. People expect fury. They don't know what to do when you hand them consequences in gift wrap. When I got home, another neighbor, Patricia, queen of the HOA newsletter, was walking her golden retriever. She waved with the kind of smile politicians practice in bathroom mirrors. "Tanya, we heard Greg's on a trip. So exciting." "Very," I said. "I love when people take time to reflect on their choices." She nodded like she understood, even though she absolutely did not. By dinner, she'd be texting 5 friends. "Something is going on with Tanya. Keep an eye out." Good. The more whispers, the better. Gossip is a resource in this town, and I was finally learning how to mine it. Once inside, I began the most sentimental task of all, removing personal photos. Not for nostalgia, but for theatrics. I left one framed photo, Greg's favorite image of himself on a mountain, looking heroic, holding a hiking stick he borrowed from a guide and later pretended he owned. I hung it perfectly scented above the fireplace, with a sticky note taped to the frame. "Take only what belongs to you." I wasn't sure he'd get the symbolism, but I was sure someone else would tell him what it meant. Men like Greg rarely interpret meaning without a translator. At 6 p.m., the movers returned. They were surprised when I pointed to the oven and said, "That too." Apparently, it's unusual to uninstall your own appliances while smiling. I tipped them again, which made them less curious. By 8 p.m., the house looked like a furnished Airbnb that had been looted by someone with excellent taste. Even the mattress was gone. I left the frame because I'm not cruel, just strategic. Let him sleep on slats and think about his choices. I sat on the floor, leaning against a wall, drinking water from a mug that survived the purge, only because I needed something for hydration that wasn't a wine glass. I thought about the word revenge. People picture melodrama, spray painting cars, slashing tires, torches and pitchforks. But sometimes revenge is simply the absence of comfort, a vacuum, a quiet shift from mine to not yours anymore. I didn't do any of this because I wanted him to hurt. I did it because he expected me to collapse, and I don't collapse. I recalculate. Around 9 p.m., I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Usually I'd ignore it, but something told me to pick up. It was Claudia. "Tanya." "Hey, strange question. Are you and Greg okay?" There it was, the storm front rolling in. "We're fine," I said, though we're redefining fine in separate households occasionally. Claudia gasped the way someone does when they're thrilled but pretending to be concerned. "Oh no, did something happen?" "You posted something," I said. "That helped me realize something." Silence. The good kind. "Listen," she finally said, "I didn't know he was, well, bringing someone. He told Mom she was a consultant." "Oh, she's consulting, all right," I said. "Just not on contracts." She laughed in shock. "Wow, you're taking this well." "Well," I said, "is relative." We hung up and I knew 2 things. 1. By morning, the entire family would know. 2. Greg would assume I caused the leak, which was beautiful because I didn't have to. His own sister started the bonfire. I just brought a chair. Before bed, I made one last move. I sent a certified letter to Greg's work address, beginning the legal process for divorce, citing abandonment. No yelling, no sobbing, no threats. Just paperwork that ensures spousal support and legal footing. When I sealed the envelope, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt organized. There's a difference. Tomorrow, I would leave the key under the mat for the locksmith to pick up. I'd set the thermostat to something unreasonable, like 82, just to prove I was done adjusting temperatures for his comfort. And then I'd wait. Not for him. For the moment he walked into the hollow shell of the life he thought he controlled. He wanted space. I gifted him a whole house of it, and I wasn't even close to finished. Greg and Lila's return flight was scheduled for 4:15 p.m. on Sunday, which I knew not, because he told me, but because Claudia tagged the airport location on her "See you soon, paradise" post like a digital breadcrumb for the curious and the petty. I checked the timestamp, did the math, and estimated they'd be pulling into Maplewood by early evening, perfect time for the neighbors to be watering lawns, grilling, or pretending not to stare through blinds. I arrived 2 hours early, parking at the far end of the cul-de-sac, just close enough to see the house, but far enough to look like someone waiting for a podcast to finish. My car was my surveillance room, snack station, and witness stand. I had an iced coffee, a bag of pretzels, and the satisfaction of someone who had planned more in 72 hours than Greg had planned in his entire adult life. The house looked surreal from a distance, still standing, still respectable, still perfect lawn. But inside it was a shell, and that was the point. He spent months removing me emotionally. I just sped up the physical parallel. I thought about the first time we walked through that front door, how proud he'd been of the open floor plan, as if he'd designed it himself, how he'd bragged about space for the future, as if space meant anything if you kept filling it with lies. While I waited, I scrolled through Maplewood's private Facebook group. It was already buzzing from yesterday's HOA meeting, where Patricia slipped in the sentence, "Thoughts and prayers for the Millers during their transitional chapter," which was Suburban 4. Something juicy happened and I want someone to message me privately so I can pretend I didn't start it. A few neighbors commented with emojis. Someone posted, "Is Tanya okay?" Someone else responded, "Heard she left. Anyone know where she went?" Which was extra funny, since I was literally sitting at the end of the street eating pretzels. People never look outside, they just refresh feeds. At 4:50, a rideshare SUV appeared at the entrance of the subdivision, slowing as it approached our cul-de-sac. I sat up. Showtime. Greg got out first, tan, smug, the kind of relax that only comes from expensive beach chairs and zero accountability. He wore a linen shirt unbuttoned just enough to suggest he forgot how shirts work. His hair was styled like he'd spent too much time watching grooming tutorials. And he looked very pleased with himself, the way a man does when he thinks the universe has already forgiven him. Then she got out. Lila. Tall, toned, confident in that influencer way where posture is business. She wore matching luggage-tone athleisure and sunglasses the size of small windshields. Even from a distance, I could tell she expected applause, or at least admiration. Maplewood, unfortunately for her, only specializes in forced compliments and passive-aggressive remarks. The driver took the bags out of the trunk. Greg didn't tip, which made me feel vindicated about many past arguments. They walked up the path, laughing. Lila had a camera in her hand, probably still vlogging her healing trip. I almost wanted to see the footage. Nothing says cinematic like a hard pivot from dream getaway to where is the furniture? Greg unlocked the door, pushed it open, and, even from my car, I could sense the silence. Not the usual house silence, the hollow silence of absence. No couch, no dining table, no framed photos. The mattress gone, the silverware gone, the rugs gone, the throws gone. Even the coasters gone, because coasters matter more once you no longer have a table. At first, he didn't move. Then he turned his head slowly, the way people do when they can't decide whether they've been robbed or haunted. Lila walked in behind him, froze, then mouthed something I couldn't hear, but based on the way her face folded in horror, it was not a prayer. Greg walked further in, raising his voice, like yelling might magically summon possessions back into existence. His tone traveled through the open windows, sharp and indignant. "What the? Where is everything? Where's the couch? Where are you kidding me?" "Oh, I wasn't kidding." Lila's voice rose behind him, equal parts shock and inconvenience. "Greg, what is this? Did someone break in? Why is the kitchen empty?" He opened cabinets. Nothing. Opened the fridge. One lonely baking soda box. No food, no dignity. Just a cool white cube of consequence. He started shouting my name even though he knew I wasn't inside. Tanya, what did you do?" I didn't answer. I just watched. He stomped to the bedroom, still yelling. Then he stomped back. Leela followed, arms crossed, looking like someone just cancelled her brand deal. Eventually, she pulled out her phone, probably to text a friend. "House missing. Send emotional support and Wi-Fi." Greg stormed outside, pacing the driveway, hands in hair, muttering about legal rights and unbelievable. Then he did exactly what I expected him to do. He called me. Phone vibrated. Caller ID, Greg Miller. I let it ring, and stop. 5 seconds later, another call. Ignored. Then came the text. "Greg, what did you do? Where is everything? Are you out of your mind?" A beautiful trifecta of panic, confusion, and entitlement. I screenshotted it in case a judge ever wanted a character reference. He tried again. "Greg, you can't just take things. We built this life together. Built. Together." Which was adorable, considering the last thing we built together was a Google Calendar for trash pickup. I replied one sentence. Everything I removed was paid for by me. Receipts available upon request. Then I added a smiley face, because sometimes punctuation is a weapon. The typing bubbles appeared, disappeared, reappeared, vanished again. I imagined him pacing, typing something furious, deleting it, trying again, realizing every version made him sound worse. Then, "Greg, this is insane. You're acting like a crazy person." The classic pivot. When manipulation fails, diagnose the other person. I didn't reply. Instead, I adjusted my mirror in time to see the next delicious moment. Greg marching toward the driveway where his SUV should have been. He stopped, looked, turned slowly like he expected it to be hiding behind a hedge. "Where's the car?" he yelled toward the sky, as if someone up there might answer. Lila said something, probably about calling the police, but Greg waved her off. He pulled out his phone and tried opening his banking app. And then I knew the exact moment he saw the withdrawals. His face changed. Not shock, more like betrayed confidence, the expression of a man who thought the rules didn't apply to him and was now being introduced to reality. He sat on the curb, elbows on knees, staring at the house like it had personally insulted him. Neighbors started peeking through blinds. Someone turned down their TV. Someone else walked out to fake water their plants. Lila looked around, noticed the attention, and did what influencers do best, removed herself from responsibility by calling a rideshare. She stood there waiting, stone-faced, rolling her luggage with the poise of someone who believed this was just a temporary inconvenience, until she asked Greg if she could use his card to book a hotel. I didn't need to hear the answer. The freeze on the joint accounts was thorough. Her tone shifted. Her posture stiffened. She backed away like someone avoiding fleas. When the car arrived, she got in without hugging, without offering help, without even pretending to be loyal. She left the same way she arrived, focused on her own reflection. As the car pulled away, Greg shouted, "Lila, wait! Just give me a second." She didn't wait. Silence followed. the kind that sticks. And then he finally looked up, right at my car, locked eyes, recognition, fury. He started walking toward me. I rolled down the window 2 inches, just enough for air, not enough for conversation. "You think this is funny?" he yelled. "You think this is some kind of game?" "No," I said, calm as a nurse taking a temp. "I think this is accountability. New concept for you, I know. You can't just rip my life apart." "I didn't rip it. I just removed what belonged to me. You did the rest." "So that's it? You ruin me and drive off?" "Not ruin, reallocate." He ran his hand through his hair, desperate and frustrated. "You're out of control." "No," I said. "You just finally lost yours." He stared, waiting for me to soften. I didn't. "I loved you," he said, like the words could time travel. "And I believed you," I answered, "until you flew my family out to celebrate my replacement." He flinched, because truth is a better weapon than fists. He tried one more shot. "You'll regret this." "That's the first time you've ever made a realistic prediction." I put the car in drive. "Good luck building your future, Greg. You'll need it now that you have to do it without my credit score." I drove away slow, not dramatic, not screeching. Just steady, clean exit. In the rearview mirror, I saw him on the curb again, head in hands, surrounded by the echo he built for himself. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel triumph. I felt finished. Revenge isn't fire. It's closure measured in paperwork, planning, and silence. And that was only phase 1, because he thought losing furniture was the end. But consequences, real consequences, don't show up all at once. They arrive in waves, and his tide hadn't even started yet. There's a saying they use in nursing: the body doesn't crash all at once. It warns you in small ways first. A skipped heartbeat, a drop in pressure, a twitch that means something bigger is coming. That's how Greg was unraveling. Slow signals, escalating symptoms, no awareness that the real collapse hadn't even arrived yet. Phase 1 had targeted his comfort. Phase 2 was about his pride. And nothing bruises pride faster than public embarrassment mixed with quiet humiliation, especially when it comes from someone you assumed would stay silent forever. But before I went after Greg again, I had someone else to visit, Lila. I wasn't done with her, not by a long shot, not because she stole Greg. You can't steal what isn't loyal. I wanted her because she walked around like life was an online video, filtered, choreographed, caption-ready, and I wanted to remind her that real consequences don't come with retouching tools. I found her easily. Influencers are predictable: studio-lit gyms, smoothie bars, organic markets where fruit costs more per pound than rent in a small town. She posted her location like breadcrumbs for admiration. I didn't need GPS, I just needed Wi-Fi. Her latest video was titled "Starting Fresh, New Chapter Energy," which is influencer code for "Things fell apart, but I'm still pretending I'm in control." In the background, I could see the branded logo of a fitness center in town. Good. Local. I didn't rush. Revenge works best at a walking pace. The next morning, I showed up to that gym in basic yoga pants, hair in a messy knot, with the energy of someone who came for cardio but stayed for confrontation. No appointment, no permission. Just a guest pass and a smile that didn't touch my eyes. Lila was exactly where I expected her to be. Front row, center mirror, recording herself doing weighted lunges like she was leading a cinematic training montage. Every time she exhaled, she checked the camera first, making sure her face was angled like she was selling determination. I leaned against a wall and watched. She looked up, did a double take, then looked again like she wasn't sure if I was a hallucination or a plot twist. Her expression flickered: surprise, irritation, calculation. "Tanya," she said, removing one earbud. "Wow, this is awkward." "No," I said. "Awkward was when you boarded a plane with my husband while my family cheered." She smirked. "I didn't know you two were still serious." We were married. She shrugged, like marriage was a hobby that shouldn't get in the way of an upgraded wardrobe. That's between you and him, she said. I have nothing to do with your drama. I stepped forward, voice low. You were the drama. She rolled her eyes and reached for her water bottle. Listen, I don't need negative vibes right now. I'm rebuilding. Good, I said, because rebuilding becomes harder when people know what you did to get the bricks. She froze just long enough for me to know I'd struck the right nerve. Then I took out my phone. Here, I said, scrolling. This is the part where you get nervous. I pulled up a screenshot of her posing with Greg in Cancun. Underneath it, the airline seat confirmation, showing Greg paid for everything with a joint account. In her name, nothing. In mine, legal grounds. Her face paled, not emotionally, but financially. You wouldn't, she said. I already did, I said. I sent your little vacation receipts to the investigator handling asset division. You're about to be Exhibit B in a very expensive courtroom slideshow. She tried to laugh. You think that scares me? No, I said. This does. I held up the second screenshot, a copy of a livestream comment thread from one of her workout videos. Fans asking why she suddenly disappeared. One asking if she was the homewrecker from Maplewood. Another, girl, is it true you stole someone's husband? Her confidence slipped like a bad filter. I didn't steal anyone, she snapped. No, I said. You borrowed something that didn't belong to you, and now I'm repossessing the rest. She set her water bottle down too hard. I should call security. Do it, I said. Then I'll tell them you used a married man's money to finance your vacation. Theft is still theft, even if you pack light. She stared at me like she'd never met a woman who didn't crumble on cue. That was her mistake. She assumed I'd be the crying wife, not the strategist in running shoes. You think you can just show up and threaten me, she said. I'm not threatening you, I said. Threats are promises I haven't scheduled yet. Then I walked past her, slow and deliberate, and whispered. That was the calm version. She didn't follow. She looked in the mirror, not at me, but at herself, and for the first time, I saw panic break through her curated glow. But that wasn't the main revenge. That was just foreplay. 2 days later, I escalated. She posted a video titled, Reset Morning Routine, filmed outside her apartment building. In the background was her car, a pristine white hybrid, spotless, modestly luxurious. Cute. At 3 a.m., I paid it a visit. No vandalism, no crime. I don't do jail. I do irritation. I wrapped the entire car in sticky notes, hundreds of them. Neon pink, each one with the same handwritten line. Remember who paid for your flight? I even layered the windshield. A love letter from Consequence. By sunrise, half the building was taking photos. Someone posted it online. When karma gets creative. Lila didn't post that story, but she did call me, blocked number, voice furious. What is wrong with you? Plenty, I said, but I'm organized about it. You're unhinged. No, I said, I'm symmetrical. Everything you touched gets touched back. You're obsessed, she yelled. Not with you, I said, with finishing what I start. She hung up. I'm sure she looked out the window again, just to make sure the sticky notes were really there. But even that wasn't the main act. The main act was the parking lot. 4 days later, I walked into her gym again. This time, I waited outside, leaning against her car as she ended her class. She walked out with 2 friends, laughing like nothing was unraveling behind the scenes. When she saw me, she stopped. Her friends whispered. She squared her shoulders. I stayed still. You need to leave me alone, she said. No, I said. I need you to listen. She tried to walk past me. I stepped in front of her. Her friends backed away. You want to play bold? I said. Let's play bold. I slapped her, not hard, not violent, just enough to shock, enough to stop the performance, enough to erase the influencer and reveal the person. She gasped. Hand flew to her cheek, eyes wide. That, I said quietly, is what life feels like when it isn't filmed. You're insane, she whispered. No, I said, I'm awake. I leaned in. You walked into my life, into my marriage, into my house like I was background noise. Consider this a volume adjustment. She didn't speak, not because she couldn't, but because she finally understood she wasn't in a story she controlled. I stepped back. Last warning, I said, disappear from Greg's life, or I'll attach your name to every lawsuit, every filing, every witness list. You'll spend more time in courtrooms than you do in gyms. Then I walked away. No running, no yelling, no cinematic music, just calm steps, steady and final. And that was the moment I knew she believed me, because she didn't follow, didn't shout, didn't record. She just stood there, frozen in place, realizing she'd been playing on a field where she was not the strongest player. The next morning, her page went private. Her followers dropped. Her comments turned from admiration to speculation. Her last video was, taking time off social media for mental reset. Translation, she was hiding. Good. Phase 2 complete. And now? Now it was time for the part Greg never saw coming. Not anger, not screaming, not sabotage. Just the slow, public unraveling of the life he built out of image instead of substance. Because when a man like Greg falls, he doesn't notice the ground, he notices the audience. And Maplewood loved a show. I just had to give them a front row seat. Maplewood is the kind of place where people pretend not to stare, but stare anyway. They water lawns that don't need watering, walk dogs that already walked, wipe spotless mailboxes just to stand outside long enough to eavesdrop. Secrets don't survive here. They marinate. Which is exactly why Phase 3 was never going to be private. Greg was already wobbling. Lila had vanished from the narrative. His car was gone. His house was a furniture museum. And his bank account was now a sad echo. But humiliation isn't complete until it is witnessed. Men like Greg don't crumble alone. They crumble when they realize there is an audience. And Maplewood was ready for a performance. The trigger was small, barely a nudge. I attended the Saturday HOA meeting. The fact that I showed up already sent a shockwave through the grapevine, because the last time I attended, I brought brownies and asked if anyone needed help organizing the food pantry drive. This time, I arrived with no baked goods, no smile, and a folder of documents. The silence when I walked in was priceless. Even the coffee machine paused in solidarity. Patricia, our president and part-time suburban monarch, gave me the kind of smile reserved for donation checks and scandal updates. "Oh, Tanya, how nice to see you." "Likewise," I said, taking a seat in the front row. I figured it was time to be more involved in the community again. Someone coughed. Someone else pretended to check their phone, but was definitely texting. "Tanya is here with Ath." The meeting droned through landscaping fees, parking spot complaints, and a dramatic argument about whether solar lights were tasteful or trashy. Maplewood problems. Meanwhile, I sat still, letting them wonder. Curiosity is a slow, delicious fuse. At the end, Patricia asked if anyone had announcements. I stood. For a moment, every throat cleared itself into silence. "I'd just like to thank the HOA for the support during my transitional phase." I said it lightly, like I wasn't about to detonate a social bomb. Patricia gave a slow blink. "Of course, dear. We always support our residents." "Oh, I know," I said, "especially considering it's been quite an interesting month for the Millers." The word Millers hit like a dropped plate. Conversations halted mid-breath. I continued. "Since Greg returned from his vacation with his consultant, I've been so grateful for the messages. I truly appreciate the people who reached out to check on me. And for those who only checked because they wanted information, don't worry, you'll get it soon." A gasp, maybe two, definitely a whispered, "Oh my gosh." Then I sat. I didn't need to say more. The meeting adjourned, and within 10 minutes Maplewood was buzzing like a hornet hive with a Wi-Fi signal. That was the point. I didn't need to spread a story. I just needed to open the cage and let it run. The next 48 hours were magic. Quiet, strategic magic. Greg had no idea. He thought silence meant safety. He thought I had moved on. He thought wrong. The first ripple hit him on Monday. A co-worker of his, Evan, the kind of man who wears polos tucked into pleated khakis, sent him a friendly text. Evan: "Hey man, is everything okay? Saw some posts going around. Call me." Greg predictably responded with righteous confusion. "Greg, what posts?" Evan told him the truth. Someone screenshot the airport video. Someone else added a caption: "When your marriage is just a tax bracket." Then someone else tagged the local gossip page. Maplewood isn't a place where stories grow, they multiply. Greg called me. I didn't answer. He called again. Ignored. Finally, a text. "Greg, you're spreading lies about me." I typed back, "I haven't said a word. Your actions did the speaking." He didn't reply. 2 hours later, I got a notification. Greg had been removed from his company's leadership mentorship program list on their website. I didn't do that. People underestimate how fast reputations shift when the narrative changes rooms. That evening, I stopped by Cafe Linden, our local spot where moms, freelancers, and judgment all share the same air. I wasn't there for coffee. I was there for timing. Greg walked in 10 minutes after I did. He didn't see me. He was too busy confronting the barista about why his corporate card wasn't processing. "Oh, that's weird," she said, trying it again. "It says unavailable." "Run it again," he snapped. She ran it again. Still declined. He tried another card. Declined. His face turned the color of expired yogurt. People were watching. No one pretended not to. "I don't understand," he said. I walked up then, iced latte in hand. "Oh, Greg," I said sweetly. "Did the account freeze catch you by surprise?" He turned, eyes wide. Yeah, I said. "Joint accounts work both ways. I just happened to read the fine print." He lowered his voice. "Can we not do this here?" "We're not doing anything," I said. "You're just realizing I was smarter than you thought." A woman nearby whispered, "Is that the husband?" Another whispered back, "That's him, the Cancun guy." Greg threw a 20 on the counter and walked out fast. I took a sip and said to the barista, "Keep the change." She smiled like she'd been tipped in plot twists. That was phase 3, public erosion. But the best was yet to come. Wednesday night was trivia night at the Maplewood Community Center, a weekly event for people who pretend they're there for fun but are actually auditioning for intellectual superiority. Greg used to love trivia night. He loved to correct people, interrupt mid-sentence, and say things like, "actually," before quoting the wrong fact. So I went. The trivia host welcomed everyone, and I sat in the back with a group of women I barely knew, but who all knew me now. 10 minutes in, the door opened. Greg walked in, alone. No Lila, no smile, no swagger. Just a man trying to sit in his old seat at a table full of people who weren't saving him a chair. He spotted me, froze. I raised my glass, a polite toast. He sat at a different table. Nobody asked him to join. Trivia began. In round 2, the host paused after announcing a question and said, "And before we continue, quick reminder, phone use is not allowed unless you're checking on your marriage status. Then again, even that can change when you aren't looking." A few people laughed. A few stared straight ahead, pretending not to. Greg shifted in his chair. No one defended him. Because that's the thing about public ruin. It's not just losing status. It's losing allies. He left early. I left later, slow, content, and entirely unbothered. On my way out, I passed Claudia's car. She rolled down the window and whispered, "You know he's totally falling apart, right?" "I know," I said. "I predicted it." "You're terrifying," she said. "No," I corrected. "I'm prepared." The very next morning, I got an email from my lawyer. Subject, divorce. Filing update. Tanya, based on recent shifts in Greg's accounts and employment status, settlement looks more favorable for you than anticipated. We'll schedule call next week. Translation: the weaker he looked, the more leverage I gained. Legal pressure, social collapse, financial strain, all moving pieces of the same machine. But there was one last scene I needed before the final act. The coffee shop confrontation. It wasn't planned. It was earned. Friday afternoon, Cafe Linden again. I sat near the window, journaling, pretending to be serene. Then the bell over the door rang, and in came Greg, walking like a storm cloud wearing business casual. He saw me, actually hesitated. That was new. Then he approached. "You've made your point," he said. "Enough." I looked up. "I haven't spoken to anyone. You did all this yourself." "You're lying," he snapped. "Someone told my co-workers. Someone posted things. Someone took my car. Someone destroyed my life." "No," I said, voice calm. "I removed the parts that belonged to me. Everything else?" "That's fallout." He leaned in, whispering like we were co-conspirators instead of consequences. "You want revenge? Fine, you got it." I said I was sorry. "Where?" I asked. "In what universe? You texted me that I was old news." "That wasn't an apology. That was an eviction notice." He blinked. "You think this ends well for you," he said. "You're making enemies." "I'm making space," I corrected. "The enemies made themselves." He stared at me, expecting hesitation. Then, "What do you want?" There it was. The real question. The one people only ask when the damage is already done. I stood, slung my bag over my shoulder, and said, "I don't want anything from you. Wanting implies attachment. I'm done with that. All I wanted was for you to feel the absence you assumed I'd quietly accept." Then I walked past him, not triumphant, just finished. The woman at the corner table lowered her latte, eyes wide. Greg stayed frozen, caught in his own silence. And that was when I knew. Phase 4 was ready. The final confrontation, not loud, not violent, just inevitable. Because I hadn't merely taken things from him. I'd taken the version of himself he performed for the world. And once a man like Greg loses his audience, he isn't a star. He's just a shadow looking for a spotlight that isn't coming back. There's a special kind of quiet that settles over a house right before the end of something. Not the peaceful kind, not the soft kind, more like the silence right after a microphone cuts off in the middle of a speech. Something was supposed to keep going, and it didn't. That's what Greg's house felt like when I walked past it that Thursday morning. Not an ending, just a system finally realizing no one was holding the power cord anymore. The lawn still looked perfect, because Maplewood doesn't let a marriage collapse interfere with turf standards. The hedges were trimmed. The porch light still came on at sunset because the timers were set months ago. Everything was still performing the illusion of stability, just like Greg did for years. But I didn't come to inspect the landscaping. I came to look at the house and feel absolutely nothing. And I did, which was the most satisfying part. The county update had come in earlier that morning, lien filed. His name on the property, his name on the debt, his name on the problem. Not mine. The judge's stamp made it official. Whoever said closure isn't paperwork clearly never met a clerk who processes filings with dead-eyed efficiency and no interest in romantic tragedy. My lawyer called around noon. "Everything's locked in," she said. "From this point on, he's legally and financially responsible for the full property balance. No ties to you. You're out clean." Clean. That was the word that mattered. Not dramatic, not vengeful. Clean. I didn't want ash and rubble. I wanted detachment, signed and notarized. When I walked by the house, Greg stepped outside. He wasn't angry. Anger requires enough energy to believe there's still a fight worth having. He was something past that, like a man who finally realized every exit door locked behind him while he was bragging about how many keys he had. He didn't say anything. I didn't either. That was the beauty of it. The truth was already loud enough. I didn't need to gloat. I didn't need a speech. I didn't need him to admit he was wrong. The best revenge is when their reality does the talking for you. Later in the afternoon, I sat in my new apartment, smaller than the house, yes, but mine, furnished with things I chose and actually liked. No massive TV bought for sports bonding. No decorative drink cart Greg insisted guests found inviting. Just space that felt like air instead of duty. I made coffee. Real, good coffee. Not the brand Greg bought because the packaging looked premium. And while I drank it, I thought about something that surprised me. I wasn't angry anymore. Not the quiet kind, not the simmering kind, not the kind that waits behind the ribs like a coiled thing. The anger was gone. That was the one result Greg never planned for. He thought I'd stay emotional long enough for him to feel superior. But nothing confuses a man who expects a breakdown like a woman who's already past it. That's when I knew it was time for the last step. Not revenge. Revenge was already done. This was something else. What you do when you finish the work and just need to sign your name. I waited for evening. Maplewood always tells the truth at dusk. Curtains open just wide enough to spy. Neighbors pretending to walk dogs. They already walked 3 hours earlier. The quiet hum of sprinklers cycling like background noise for unspoken judgment. At 7:12 p.m., I walked up the driveway. No dramatic soundtrack, no glowing moon, no trembling hands. Just me, and the house I once thought I'd grow old in. Before I realized growing old wasn't the goal. Growing smart was. I used the key from the locksmith. A key Greg never knew was cut. The door opened with the exact kind of click that tells you fate has humor. Greg was inside, sitting in the middle of the living room in a lone fold-up camping chair because there was nothing else left to sit on. He didn't look surprised to see me, which was almost disappointing. He looked aware, like the mental math had finally added up and the answer was not flattering. He didn't stand, just stared. "You came," he said, voice flat. "No," I said. I returned. "Coming implies invitation." He exhaled, something between exhaustion and resignation. "You win," he said. That was the first foolish thing he said that night. "This was never a competition," I replied. "You started a demolition. I just finished the cleanup." He looked around the empty room, slow and defeated. "I've lost everything." "You lost everything you assumed you owned," I said. "That's not the same." He rubbed his face with both hands. He didn't look like the chair salesman version of himself anymore. No tailored suit, no polished shoes. Just a man wearing the same polo 3 days in a row because laundry wasn't designed for emotional collapse. "I messed up," he said. "You committed a pattern," I corrected. "Messing up is spilling coffee. What you did had planning, scheduling, and sunscreen involved." That got a flinch. Good. Emotion means the brain is working again. He gestured to the empty house. "I don't even know how to fix this." "You don't fix it," I said. "You live in it. That's how consequence works." He leaned back, looked at the ceiling, breathed like the air was suddenly too heavy. "You want me to apologize?" "No," I said. "Apologies are for people who still have a place in my life. You're not in that category anymore." He stared at me for a long time then. Not lovingly, not angrily. Just like someone realizing the test they thought they could charm their way through actually required studying. "I thought you'd never leave." "I didn't leave," I said. "I just stopped staying." He blinked slow. "You planned all this?" "You taught me how to," I said. "By doing things behind my back. You just never expected me to take notes." He didn't deny it. He knew I was right. And for the first time, I saw the exact second when Greg understood he wasn't the tragic hero of this story. He was the villain who finally met the person willing to write an ending he couldn't rewrite. Then the sprinklers outside turned on, timed, automatic, loyal, only to the schedule I programmed before I left. Water hit the windows in steady arcs, streaking the glass like staged rain in a drama series. The floodlights kicked on next, triggered by movement, illuminating the front yard like a spotlighted stage. It was theatrical without being dramatic, like the universe wanted to underline the moment with a highlighter. Greg turned, startled by the noise and sudden brightness. "Did you—" "Yes," I said. "Everything in this house still working is because of something I set before I left." He didn't speak, because that wasn't just about sprinklers and lights. That was the metaphor. Everything that functioned here still existed because of me. Everything broken, that belonged to him. I reached into my bag, pulled out the final envelope, court-approved file copies, settlement details, transfer confirmations, the last legal step. I placed it on the floor between us. He looked at it like it was a snake. "What's that?" "The rest of your life," I said. "Signed, sealed, non-returnable." He didn't touch it. He didn't have to. His body language already showed he understood the contents. This house, this debt, this emptiness, fully his. "You really just let everything go," he said. "No," I corrected. "I chose what to carry. You weren't on the list." That moment, that's when he finally sagged, like a balloon losing air, like he wasn't holding himself up anymore. He whispered, "I don't know who I am without control." "That's because control was the only thing you practiced," I said. "Try taking responsibility. It's quieter, but it works." I walked toward the door. No dramatic goodbye. No moral lesson. No hug. That's movie nonsense. Real endings happen with clean exits and full clarity. And before I stepped outside, I said the only line that mattered. "I didn't ruin your life, Greg. I just stopped protecting you from the parts you ruined yourself." Then I walked out. No slow motion, no regrets, no turning back. Outside, the sprinklers hit the driveway. The alarm system beeped in the distance. The neighborhood lit up in windows and porch lights and curiosity. And I kept walking. Because that's how a story ends when the writer takes the pen back. Not with applause, just with completion. The great thing about walking away from a house you once lived in is realizing how little of it ever belonged to you in the first place. Not legally, emotionally. You start to see the blueprint differently. You don't remember the holidays or the dinners. You remember the argument standing right where the dining table used to be, the tension in the hallway outside the bedroom, the way quiet felt louder than any slammed door. That's all a house is after a while. Storage for conversations you never wanted to have. I walked to my car, slow, steady, no rush. The kind of walk people mistake for peace, when really it's just the absence of weight. The sprinklers behind me stayed on, steady streams arching across the lawn, washing the front windows like a reset button the house didn't turn. A few porch lights flipped on across the street. Good. The Maplewood audience was assembling on schedule. A shadow moved behind Patricia's blinds. Someone across the street pretended to check their mailbox, even though the mail truck hadn't been by in 6 hours. Neighborhood suspense is its own sport. I didn't look back yet. Closure doesn't require a dramatic flourish, just distance. By the time I reached the sidewalk, my phone buzzed. Not a call. A text. Greg. Greg. Is this really it? I didn't stop walking. I didn't respond. He sent another one. Greg, you're just going to walk away? I typed, but didn't send it yet. Yes, you told me to be gone when you got back. I'm just following instructions. But I deleted it. That reply wasn't for him. That reply was for the version of me who still wanted explanations. That woman didn't exist anymore. She packed her things and left with the furniture. He texted again. Greg, we can fix this if you'd just talk to me. I almost laughed. Interesting how talk to me only shows up when consequences do. I put my phone away. Walking was the answer. There was no speech left. And then, 3 houses down, I heard it. A siren. Not police, not fire. The house alarm. The security system Greg forgot was still linked to my old settings. I'd disabled his autopay weeks ago. When that system didn't get its renewal, it did what any good system does when abandoned. It screamed. The alarm blasted through the quiet neighborhood, loud enough that porch lights turned into spectators. I stopped walking, but didn't turn around. I wanted to hear the unraveling, not witness it. Behind me, I could picture it. Greg scrambling inside, trying to enter the code I changed. Pressing buttons, swearing under his breath, realizing nothing responded. Neighbors stepping outside, whispering. The same people who once cheered for his pool parties, now watching him lose a house that was never really his to begin with. That alarm was poetic, not dramatic, just accurate, a system recognizing vacancy. I reached my car, unlocked it, and sat for a moment before starting the engine. Not to hesitate, to think, to finalize. To ask myself one last time, not, was it worth it, but, am I done? The answer was yes. Because the goal was never punishment, it was recognition. He finally saw what he did. And more importantly, so did everyone else. I started the car, headlights sweeping across the street, and right then, Greg came out of the house. He ran onto the porch, waving his arms at the alarm panel, shouting something I couldn't hear. He looked frantic, small, unanchored. The version of Greg I once knew would have cared less about the alarm and more about who was watching. But this Greg, the one standing in the doorway of a hollow house with no furniture, no money, no audience cheering for him, finally understood he wasn't in control anymore. He saw me pulling out of the driveway. He didn't chase me, didn't shout my name, just watched. Because even he knew it, there was nothing left to negotiate. I turned onto the main road, slow at first, then steady, and as Maplewood disappeared in the rearview mirror, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Not triumph, not relief, just alignment. My life finally fit inside my own hands again. Which brings me to the reflection no one ever tells you about revenge. It's not about destruction, it's about subtraction. Removing everything that once convinced you to shrink yourself to stay. The house? Gone. The title? Cleared. The shared accounts? Closed. The one-sided loyalty? Deleted. Revenge isn't rage, it's arithmetic. You just keep subtracting everything that hurt you until nothing is left to hold you in place. That night in my apartment, I poured tea. Not wine, not champagne, just tea. Normal. Calm. Ordinary in a way I hadn't tasted in years. I sat on my couch, the one I chose, paid for, moved into this place on purpose, and let the quiet fill in without choking me. For the first time in a long time, quiet meant rest, not tension. The alarm sound was still echoing in my mind, but not as a noise, as a symbol. A house recognizing it had lost its keeper. A man realizing he was never the center of gravity. A chapter ending exactly when I wanted it to. And yes, there was still paperwork ahead. Hearings, transfers, signatures. But that wasn't the story anymore. That was just maintenance. The emotional part was over. I wasn't angry. I wasn't mourning. I wasn't waiting. I was done. Fully. Irreversibly. The kind of done that leaves no door unlocked, no window cracked, no sentence unfinished. And in that stillness, I knew something else too. Revenge didn't change me. It revealed me. A woman who doesn't beg, doesn't perform collapse, doesn't wait for apologies that won't arrive. A woman who leaves correctly. A woman who understands that closure is not a conversation. It's a clean exit. And I had just walked mine. The next morning, I woke earlier than usual, not because anything demanded my attention, but because peace has a way of waking you gently. No alarm, no tension waiting behind my eyelids. Just morning light and the quiet rhythm of a day that belonged to me again. I brewed coffee, sat by the window and checked my phone. Not for messages from Greg, not for updates, just out of habit. There were notifications, of course. Maplewood never sleeps when there's scandal to metabolize. 3 missed calls from Claudia, 2 texts from neighbors pretending to check in, 1 email from the lawyer confirming the court date for final signatures, and, unsurprisingly, a voicemail from Greg. I didn't open it, not because it hurt, because it was no longer relevant. People think closure is a door slamming, but most of the time it's just losing the urge to even touch the handle. I spent the morning running errands, my timeline, my voice in my own head, not interrupted by someone else's needs. Grocery store, post office, hardware shop for curtain rods I actually liked. I walked through aisles without having to ask anyone if this color feels too much. Freedom looks like small decisions you don't have to negotiate. By noon, the lawyer emailed again. Subject, confirming status. Tanya, just to reiterate, you don't have to attend the hearing in person next week. I'll represent you. It's a formality now. He'll sign what the court already approved. I stared at those words for a moment. He'll sign what the court already approved. That's it. No dramatic confession, no hand-wringing apology, no plea for another chance, just paperwork. I didn't reply right away, not because I doubted it, because I was letting the finality settle. Not heavy, just factual. Then I stepped outside for a walk. No destination, just movement. Something symbolic about walking, about forward motion with no backward glance. I passed people who didn't know me, didn't know my story, weren't silently judging my outfit or marriage status. It felt refreshing, anonymous, real. Halfway through the walk, my phone buzzed again. This time, I checked. A message from Marla across the street. Marla. So, saw police cars outside your old house. Everything okay? Of course. Phase 4, community review, Maplewood's favorite hobby, right after passive-aggressive gardening. I wrote back, everything is exactly as it should be. She sent 3 dots, typed, deleted, started again, deleted again. She wanted details, but none were coming. Curiosity with no reward is its own punishment. Later that afternoon, I learned what happened. Not because I asked, but because Maplewood makes sure information arrives, even if you don't request delivery. Greg had called emergency services complaining that the alarm system wouldn't shut off and the house was malfunctioning. When responders came, they found a man panicking in a house mostly empty, title in his name only, no financial coverage. They didn't arrest him. They didn't pity him either. They just filed a report and left. Even the system was done rescuing him. A week ago, that would have felt satisfying in a burning kind of way. Now it just felt distant. That's when I knew something had shifted in me completely. Revenge was no longer the point. Identity was, and mine no longer included him. Evening settled again, and for the first time in months, I lit a candle in my apartment, not for mood, not for symbolism, just because I liked the scent, sandalwood and orange, a smell that had nothing to do with Greg, nothing to do with the past, nothing borrowed from a marriage, nothing mimicking calm, actual calm. While the candle flickered, I opened a notebook and wrote something simple. My life is mine again, not shared, not negotiated, not interrupted. Then I underlined mine 3 times. No poetic flourish, no Stephen King-level metaphor, just ownership. Around 9 p.m., the phone buzzed again. Another voicemail from Greg. I didn't listen. I already knew the phases by heart. 1, anger. 2, blame. 3, panic. 4, bargaining. 5, I've changed. 6, silence. He was somewhere between 4 and 5. But here's the thing about cycles. Some people loop forever. I wasn't looping anymore. I blocked the number, calmly. No emotional surge, no victory rush, just digital housekeeping. That's the real end. Not the dramatic goodbye scene, but the moment you don't need one. Before bed, I stepped onto my balcony. A soft breeze, the sound of traffic far in the distance, real life continuing without me needing to anchor it. And for the first time, I said the truth out loud. Not for anyone else. Not as a performance. Not as a line in a speech. Just for me. I'm done. Not angry, not broken, not waiting. Done. And it didn't feel sharp or bitter or triumphant. It just felt clean. The story didn't end when I walked out of that house. It ended when I walked into my own life again, and stayed. Not because I escaped something, but because I rebuilt something better, not louder, not bigger, just honest. And that's the real twist Greg never saw coming. The revenge wasn't the ruin. The revenge was the rebuild. The fact that I walked away whole while he stood in the ruins he built for himself. That's what people never understand about endings. They don't need applause, just closure. And I had it. Fully. Finally. And with that, the chapter, the house, the marriage, and the war were all over. The story didn't fade. It cut clean. Exactly where I wanted it to.